you get paid six figures from empty property.
You're not broke because you're lazy. You're not broke because there's some evil spell on you. And you're not broke because you didn't try. You're basically broke, or you're in a bind, or you're feeling some type of despair because of generational curse. In other words, something that happened years and years ago, before you were born, before my time, your time, is holding you back from achieving or getting the growth that you need to get to, survive financially. If this is the first time you're joining me, my name is Mel. This is Team U Finance, where we talk about leveling up our money. We talk about self-growth and perspectives. And we also talk about how to achieve wealth to gain prosperity in the long run. All right, so let's get into it. The first thing that I want to do is basically, define what, I think generational curses, or what has been told to us that generational curses. So generational curse is basically something that is passed down from generation to generation. In other words, it's the same stumbling block. Nothing changes. You're in the same cycle. It's, has a lot to do with poverty. You're in the same set of financial strains, and nothing seems to be getting better. And why it is defined as generational curses, because you look back and you say, well, I'm struggling, and my family struggled, and the family before that struggled, and before that, and before that. It's like a few generations that are handed down. So it's a cycle, or something that hasn't been broken, that just keeps being handed down from generation to generation, different times. So during this time that you're living now, it's your generation, this same form of poverty, or setbacks that you're dealing with, it could be handed down to the next generation. And so that's how we define it as, generational curse, or basically generational setbacks. So the big question here is this. It's like, okay, now we identify, we know what generational curse is. What causes it, and how do we break it? But before we get into, what causes it, let's talk about the first thing that we can do before we go to the root of the problem. After we discover what causes generational curse, we can basically try to change certain things. If this is the first time you're joining me again, if you haven't already, please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Really helps to let the channel grow and pushes it through the algorithm. So what caused generational curse? Generational curse was caused because many years ago, a lot of us from the beginning, from the door, we weren't really afforded with many things. We weren't given a chance. We weren't given, a lot to work with. And so as a result, with the little that we had, we were already in the negative. And because we were already in the negative, we couldn't find a way to turn it to positive. So we just ended up using what we had. And sometimes that made us come up a little bit short. Okay, that's essentially what caused generational curse. And although generational curse was caused, and some people in the families were, able to get out and start to achieve something, start to get better, a lot of people didn't follow suit. They still stayed stuck in the dilemma that they were in, and say, okay, this is what I was born into, this is what I see, and this is what I know, and I'm going to continue, I'm going to stay here. But what I feel about it is that generational curse can be changed. It can be broken. All right. And how do we break generational curse? And this is exactly what we talk about on this channel. We break generational curse, or we break the cycle, by leveling up, by changing what was done before, or we basically try to undo. Okay, we try to jump, we try to go over that hurdle. So for example, let's say, maybe a generation ago, you heard the stories that maybe, your family couldn't really work at the places that they wanted to work. They weren't afforded the opportunity, right? What did they do? They went out, they found different trades, they found different things to do. And in finding different things or different trades to do, they basically was able to achieve some more wealth and money. They broke the cycle of poverty. That is the key. You have to break the cycle of poverty in order for generational curse to be broken or to change. If you don't break the cycle or change that feeling of poverty or that act of poverty, you're never going to get out of that generational curse or that rut. So in other words, it's like we have to move forward. I always, look in my own life and I said, there were some things that I wanted to do to change my life. And one of the first things that I did, again, when I was younger, I made sure that I got myself an education. I got myself a trade because not that I knew it at the time, but as young as I was mature enough to know that, hey, I got to be able to take care of myself. I got to make a living. I can't rob Peter to pay Paul every day. I got to keep my head above water. So I figured if I went out and I got some type of training, that would help me to break the cycle and to break, that curse. Another way that I figured, that we can break generational curses is that we have to start moving around in circles or places that are positive. Because if you're struggling with dealing with being broke or some form of generational curse, and you are around people that, they're not even trying to grow, trying to be different or better, it's not going to get broken. It's not going to get broken. You're going to stay on the same level, and it's going to continue to repeat the cycle. It's just going to keep going on and on and on. So that's another way. We have to kind of move in circles and places that are positive and that show us how to achieve and how to have growth in order to break generational curse. So, of course, those things were out of our control. But now we're in a time where we can control a lot of things. And how do we control it? By changing, by starting with us first to break those cycles or those things that hurt us. We have to learn to say, listen, I know what happened in the past happened. It melded me or it shaped me the way that I am today, but I'm not going to keep living in that type of cycle. I'm going to break that cycle. I'm going to move ahead and do something else. A lot of times, we have our hopes and we have our dreams. And the simple reason why they don't come true is because we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe that we can do it. Our minds have been so molded to think that nothing is going to work. And in order to break any type of situation or any type of generational curse or any setback, we have to believe in ourselves first. When I started, trying to change my life and do certain things and have a come up, and I'm still working on it. By the grace of God, I'm still working on it. I'm still trying. I'm still trying to do what I have to do each day to get better. The very first thing that I did, I said, you know what? I'm going to clean up everything that I feel is stagnant and holding me back. Everything that I felt was in my way, I said, no, I got to break away. I got to break free. I got to change the way that I think and the way that I do things. And yes, I've seen some results. I've totally revamped every single thing that I did in my life. As a matter of fact, I wrote an ebook. It's called 10 Steps to Level Up Your Money. And it's no miraculous writing. But all it is just, basically a compilation of 10 things that I believe that, if you have those things in place or you try to set those things, it could kind of change a little bit. It could break cycles. It could break bad cycles or break bad financial cycles. Okay. It's called 10 Steps to Level Up Your Money. It's a nice, easy read and it's an easy download, once you purchase the book. It just gives you some tips and ideas on things that you should have or try to set in place in order to grow and level up your money. So again, to break any form of curse or any type of issues or setback, we have to basically start by leveling up. We have to get the basic things and the basic necessities in life that will allow us to, have financial growth. That's exactly, the beginning of, breaking generational curse. Again, please comment, like, and subscribe if this video resonates with you or you believe that the content, could be shared with somebody else. Please share the content so far. I just want to say, I believe that anything that is deemed as bad or horrible, I believe that it can be changed. Once you feel good about yourself and, you're positive and you have that self-esteem that's telling you or building you up, you got to feel good. And once you feel good, sky's the limit. So with that said, people, if you've gotten this far in my message, I thank you for your time. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. And remember, we're not looking back. We're moving forward. We're not looking back at the generations before, the generations, that's even 2 times before us. We're focusing on now. We're focusing on breaking cyclical curses or generational curses. Hey, beautiful people. It's your girl Mel here from Team U Finance. And today we're going to be talking about high yield savings accounts. So I did some research and I found a few high yield savings accounts, some of them even offering up to 5% APY, which is actually really, really good. What a great way to get a bang for your buck. All right, the first one that I found is one named Zinlo. Zinlo Bank. That is Zinlo Bank. Never heard of them before, but I like what I saw. They're giving an APY of 5%. Yes, 5%. Can't believe it. It's actually really, really good. That's a great way to start saving with your high yield savings account. All right, the second bank that I found was a bank named Genius Bank. That's Genius Bank. This one is a little bit lower than Zenlo, but this one offers 4.8%. Still a very high interest rate. Okay. Another bank that I found was Pi Bank, literally Pi, P-I Bank. This one came in at 4.75%. So we're looking at, 4.75%, almost 5%. We're close enough. Another bank that I found was Open Bank. Open Bank is offering the same 4.75%. Now, I know we want to get the most for our money, but again, depending on what the lenders have to offer or what the banks are giving, you might want to research to see what the best one is. Sometimes having the highest one is not necessarily the best. It's who's going to have, the best requirements, depending what minimum they require you to deposit to start. Because a lot of these accounts, you have to have a certain amount of money to fund to get the interest rate. All right. Another bank that I thought was very good was Brio Direct. Brio is also 4.75, 4.75%. That's another great way to start your high yield savings account. And the last, but not least, offering 4.75% is also Fitness Bank. Fitness Bank offers 4.75%. Now, the goal here is to start saving with our high yield savings account. Left up to me, I'd probably call the banks or go online again and look at the requirements and research and see who has the best offer, the better requirements, what they require me to deposit. From what I saw when I did research, I saw that Zinlo Bank didn't really require you to deposit any money at all to start. They just want to make sure that your deposit is coming through. So one might want to start with Zinlo Bank. I'll leave the link for the banks in the description. I'll put the website address so that we can basically go on and look and research for yourself. But right now we have Zinlo Bank coming in as the winner. Another one that I thought was really good, although the percentage was a little bit lower, was the Brio Direct. Brio was at 4.75, but again, Brio didn't require you to have anything to put down. All you had to do was literally open an account and start. Okay, so you're not broke because you're lazy. You're not broke because there's, some spell on you. You're broke because of generational curse. All right, let's get into it. My name is Mel. This is Team U Finance, where we talk about all things finance, self-motivation, growth, and leveling up. So, what is generational curse? Generational curse is basically cyclical poverty or anything that's been handed down from years and years from different generations, and it's carried through to you. And it's a cycle that you haven't broken yet. And you say to yourself every day, it just keeps getting worse and worse. And many times you don't even realize that you're living in a generational curse. So let's break it down and talk about the factors that contribute to generational curse. Generational curse goes back to poverty from, your ancestors or your forefather. So generally, many times we're not really given a lot of things to start with. Okay? Whatever little we have, we try our best to make it work, but for some strange reason, it never ends up working out. So on a financial aspect, we tend to feel that we're not making any progress, and we tend to feel less than. So hence, when generational curse tends to continue, a lot of us come upon stumbling blocks, and we wonder why these things keep happening, why we can't break the cycle. So let's talk about how we need to break that cycle of generational curse. Well, the first way to break generational curse, as I always say, is to level up, change the pattern, break the cycle. How do you change and break the pattern? How do you break the cycle? Well, the first thing you do is that you start taking care of you, and you get yourself where you need to be financially. Get yourself up on a financial level. So, for example, let's say you're in a family where generational curse was, always a problem, that you never really made a lot of money. The first thing you could possibly do is try to get some type of training to help you with that generational curse. Because remember, when you have training and you're making a lot more money, you're seeing things better and different. Hey, beautiful people. It's your girl Mel here from Team U Finance. And today I want to talk about some people that you need to stay away from when you're trying to level up your money, when you're trying to grow. So let's get right into it. First person that I want to talk about is the borrower. This is the constant borrower, the person that always calls you every time they need money. They call you in the morning, they call you in the afternoon, they call you at night. They always call you for help, but you can never reach out to them for help. So if the constant borrower comes to you all the time and is always looking for money, after a while, after letting them money for the first or second time, you're going to get tired. So there's got to be a solution to the problem. You can help the constant borrower once in a while. You can do something for them. But after a while, once you help the constant borrower, you need to come up with a solution how to solve that problem. And the way to address that problem is to ask the borrower, if I give you the money or if I loan you some money, how are you going to pay me back? What's your plan for paying me back? Another solution that you might do is if the person is always borrowing money from you, at one time or another you can say, listen, I can't keep loaning you money that you're not paying me back, but I can give you some money that you don't have to pay me back and just count it as a loss. But again, always ask the constant borrower to give you a plan of how they're going to repay you back your money. Another person that you need to stay away from when you're trying to level up your money is the people that cause drama. And let me explain what I mean by causing drama. You got some people, they strive off of chaos. They love problems, they love issues. They love to have something to talk about. Those type of people, once you get your mind set and right, you're trying to make your money grow, you're thinking of ways to make more money, you're trying to work, you're trying to save, you're coming home from work, you're tired, and all these people do is pick up the phone and call you and tell you all the drama that they either made up or is happening right now. But you don't need to hear that. When somebody like that calls your phone and try to distract you from leveling up, you need to just cut the ties. You tell them, listen, here, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm busy right now. I'm engaged in something else. Or you simply don't pick up your phone. Or you just block those type of people. People that cause drama distract you from what you're concentrating on to make your money. You don't need to deal with the drama king or the drama queen. So I basically put a few steps together to help you get that first home. All right, but before we do that, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the information. All right, the first thing that you want to do is you want to assess your finances when you want to buy a home. I've always been speaking about leveling up our finances, paying ourselves first, investing into things, buying the things that we really want, and not wasting our money frivolously. Okay? So the first thing we want to do is we want to assess our finances when we want to buy a home. What does that mean? We want to see if we're able to afford the home that we really want, our dream home. The next thing that I would do is I would actually research the neighborhood that I want to live in. I don't know, when you're thinking about where you want to live, you're thinking about where am I going to be long term? Is this a place, if I end up having children, I want to have my children live in? Is this a place that I'm going to get the most for my money? Those are some of the things that I would definitely do before investing in that first property. The next thing that I want to do is I want to get a pre-approval. I want to find a realtor. Let me just let you know, when you are looking for a home, if you don't have that pre-approval letter, realtor is not going to work with you. It only makes sense because once you have that pre-approval letter, it tells the realtor how much house you can afford to buy or where to start looking for that home. So you want to get your pre-approval first. And once you get your pre-approval, you're ready to start looking once you find that realtor. Our next step is that now that we have the realtor, we've been pre-approved, and we know exactly how much house we can buy, we're looking at the properties. We're looking at the neighborhoods that we want to buy in. We're comparing home prices. We're seeing where we're going to get the best for our dollar. Because again, as I always say, our goal is to level up, not level down, not lose. We want to gain. So we want to start looking at the properties that we definitely want to invest in. Make it be our first home. Now that you've looked and you found a property that you like, or you think it's going to be your happy home, you need to make an offer. So once you make an offer, the realtor is going to definitely put that in for you and wait and see if your offer is accepted. Once your offer is accepted, you're going to start negotiating. What does that mean? You're going to go back and forth with whoever you're buying the home from, whether it be a private seller, a bank, the house is listed, you're going to negotiate the contract price. Once you negotiate that contract price, you're going to have a home inspection and you're going to get ready to go for closing. Closing is where we all need to be. Once you get to closing, you know you've already sealed the deal, you've got your house, and you're ready to get those keys. Those are just some of the steps in getting your first home. Again, this is an exciting journey. We don't want to waste any more time not investing in that first home. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Hey, beautiful people. It's your girl Mel here from Team U Finance. And today I just want to talk about money and disrespect. You might say, Mel, what do you mean by that? First thing I'm going to tell you is that stop letting people disrespect you and your money. Stop letting people disrespect you. All right. Everybody has a time where they're broke, they're run down, they might need a little extra, they're trying to cover a bill, they need something to do, they need somebody to do something, and it's like you just can't come up with that money. First thing you want to do is you want to pick up the phone or you want to send a text and ask somebody to lend you some money. And I'm going to tell you to stop doing that. Stop disrespecting yourself and stop letting people disrespect you when you don't have no money. For this year, 2025, we're going to do a few things. We're going to build our wealth. We're going to make our money grow for us. We might even just get rich if we believe it, right? But we're not going to keep calling and borrowing and begging people for their money. We're not going to be on nobody's mercy. We're going to do what we need to do to get financial freedom and have financial security. In previous videos, I talked about, starting to pay yourself, opening certain type of accounts to get you some money, to have your emergency fund. I talked about it extensively. Check out my other videos where I'm talking about getting a high yield savings account. I talked about, building my credit. I also talked about, missing money. I talked about so many ways that you could possibly level up and get you some money other than borrowing money from people. Let me tell you something. When you're down and out and you're broke or you need a few dollars and you call people to borrow, you try to borrow from people, they might listen, but they only listen because they just want to hear how you down and out just to make fun of you. They don't want to help you. Because I guarantee at the end of the day, once you done poured your heart out and tell people how broke you were, they still didn't give you that money, right? They still didn't help you. So this year especially, because again, we starting over this year. Why are we still doing that? Why are we letting people disrespect us and disrespect our money? Why are we having a pity party with people? We're not doing that this year. For this year, we're going to work as we always do because we always got to keep a day job. We're going to work. We're going to save our money. We're going to invest our money, whether in savings accounts. Okay? We're going to buy stocks. We're going to try to buy some real estate. We're going to do little side jobs, little side hustles. We're going to do every single thing that we can do to make a little bit of change this year. We're not going to take the disrespect no more. Another thing that I wanted to reiterate and say, listen, you might say to yourself, I don't have a lot of money. I can't save. I got too many bills. I got too many things to do. Yes, you can save. I don't care if you want to pay yourself $10 a week, $10 a week, $20 a week, heck, $5 a week. Just start to put something down so when you're broke and you're down and out, you can simply just consult yourself and transfer some money to yourself. Nobody has to know what you don't have and what you need. All right? So just a little word of advice. Again, we're not disrespecting ourselves by calling and borrowing and begging people for money this year. We're going to level up. Okay, so 3 reasons why we don't co-sign. Number 1, first thing is that if you co-sign for somebody, it's going to ruin your debt to income ratio. When you go apply for something, lender looks at your credit profile. They see that you have more debt than what you're currently making or bringing in. They're not going to qualify you for anything. So it's going to put extra debt on your credit profile that you don't need, and it's going to hinder you from getting what you want to buy. Number 2, it is going to ruin your credit. It's going to start with a 30-day late. It's going to start with a 60-day late, 90-day late, up to 120 days late. Once those lates are going on your credit profile, it is going to dwindle your score. And number 3, let's say, for example, when they start, tanking your credit and you happen to confront them about it, it's going to turn into a fight. You're going to become an enemy of that person. So to prevent all these problems, to prevent your debt to income ratio being too high, to prevent your credit, dwindling or tanking, or to prevent you from getting in a fight with somebody about not making a payment, you just don't do it. Somebody asks you to co-sign, you simply tell them no. We do not co-sign because co-signing is going to stop us from leveling up our money. I also want to point out that many times when you see people doing well or you think they're doing well, it's fake. It's fake. It's fake. It's a facade. It's an act to make people or other people around them think that they're better off than them. And most times it's not even the truth. Sometimes they're either at your level or they're even worse than you. But they got to keep up that act. They got to keep up with the Joneses, as they say. Okay? So again, maybe it's just not your time and your season as yet to show progress. Hey, beautiful people. It's your girl Mel here from Team U Finance. And for today's words of wisdom, I just want to encourage you to move in silence. That's right. when you have your money, move in silence. Do not let anybody know how much you have or what you have. Because when people know what you have, they tend to want to use you and they also want to judge you. We're not about sharing our money, we're just about leveling up and doing well. Again, move in silence and keep your personal financial business to yourself. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Let yourself be the first thing that you take care of before you take care of anybody else. And once you do it and it becomes a regular routine, you'll get to see and realize the benefits that you've been missing out on. Hey, beautiful people. I hope everybody's doing well today. I have a question for you. Have you ever made a purchase and when you made the purchase, you thought it was really good, but whoever you were rolling with didn't even acknowledge the purchase that you made? Now, we're not seeking anybody's validation or approval for our purchases or for the things that we want to buy. But I guess if you're hanging out with somebody or you think the person's a friend or a close family member or what have you, and you made a major accomplishment by buying something, you'd want to be recognized or at least acknowledge what you did. So today I'm going to talk about when you make purchases, you can kind of tell who's envious of you when you make your purchases. And what I'm going to let you know that there are some purchases that when you buy certain things, you keep it to yourself. You don't need to let anybody know about your purchases. So I have a list of actually 4 things that you kind of need to keep private when you make your own purchases. The first one that I'm going to talk about is when you purchase a car. Now, depending where you live or wherever you're situated, where you are, you need a vehicle. You need a car. You need something to run around with. Most times when you tell people that you need a car, they'll probably say to you, oh, you don't need one, or you just bought one 2 years ago. Why do you need to upgrade? Why don't you just get on the train? Why don't you just take the bus? Why don't you just call a cab or call an Uber? They'll try to convince you not to get a vehicle. And the reason why they do this is because they don't want you to grow. They don't want you to level up. Now, if you say you want to get a vehicle, you don't need to explain to anybody why you need to upgrade your car or your truck or whatever it is you want to buy. But because of the envy and the jealousy, they'll try to convince you that you don't need it. They'll start telling you things like, oh, you know what? You could just continue with the one that you have. Why do you want to get an extra purchase? Why do you want to put yourself in more financial difficulty? I would imagine before you purchase the vehicle that you already, sized up to your money and knew exactly what you can and can't afford. So the point is that when you're trying to buy your car, you don't need to discuss that with anybody. You don't need to let them know. Just go to your dealership, wherever you want to purchase your car, and make your purchases. Okay? The second item that you need to keep to yourself when you're purchasing is when you're investing in, I think, stocks and investments. Any type of investment for that matter, whether it be it stocks, bonds, etc. Now, we all know that with investments that sometimes they go up and they go down. It can be very good where when you invest in something and when it splits, you get a very good return. Whereas sometimes your investments can go down. You don't need to let anybody know when you're purchasing your investments because the first thing they're going to tell you is you don't need to invest in it. They're going to say, well, if you're buying your stocks and what if the market goes down and you lose your money? They're going to act like they care. Quite frankly, they don't care because they're looking at the long run and saying, if this person or if this, my friend makes a lot of money in the stock market, they're going to leave me behind. So they don't want you purchasing investments. They don't want you to get that type of come up. So when you're doing your stocks or any type of other investments, you need to speak to a professional financial advisor or a professional broker that can advise you when and how to buy your stocks. But you need to let your friends or other people around you know because all they're going to do is convince you and be negative and try to dissuade you from buying what you want to buy. Number 3, the third thing, and I think this one is like the biggest, if not all, when you're purchasing a home. When you're purchasing such a big investment that's long-term, again, if you purchase a home, the average mortgage is 30 years, depending what you choose. But that's a lifetime commitment. That's a lifetime investment. You're always going to have the naysayer that's going to try to convince you that you don't need to invest in any form of real estate. They're going to tell you that you don't need to buy a home. You don't need to live in it. You could continue living where you're living or continue with your current housing situation. When you're buying a house, you're going to move in silence. This is the biggest purchase of your life. If somebody's in a particular situation and they want to level up and they want more growth, they want a bigger place, maybe they're building a family, maybe, they've come across some money, they want a better living space or a different living space, you don't need to let anybody know that, especially if the person that you're telling that you want to make that purchase doesn't have it. If they don't have it, they're not going to want you to get it because, again, that means that you're leveling up and you're leaving them at a certain place. Nobody wants to see the next person doing better than them. But a genuine person who really has your best interest will try to tell you that that's a good idea. Continue. They'll try to advise you. They'll say good things. But if you're making such a big purchase and they're telling you that you shouldn't buy it, then that person is just really not your friend. And it could even be a family member. They're not in your corner. So when you want to purchase something as big as your home, you don't need to let anybody know about that purchase. Okay? And I'm going to tell you something. I'll tell you a story time. I remember many years ago when I was purchasing my home. Actually, when I purchased my home, a gal that I used to move with, we, go to house of worship together. We'd roll together. We hung out. We were friends. Purchased my home. To this day, she has never stepped foot in my home. She has never stepped foot in there to look and say, hey, Mel, congratulations. None of that. Before I go a little bit further, again, if this content is good and you like it and it resonates with you, you can relate, please comment, like, subscribe, and share. Really do appreciate the support. But as I was saying with the story time, she would stop by my house, we'd hang out, she'd pick me up, but she never stepped foot in my house. Now, it's not that I needed her validation because I was already proud of myself for doing what I did. But I would think that if we were friends for so many years and I took her as a genuine friend, and I thought she was my genuine friend, that's such an accomplishment that I thought I made, that should have at least been in my corner. And that kind of taught me a lesson that, hey, you know what? Not everybody that moves with you is really with you. Sometimes they're around, but genuinely, they're not in your corner. And that's exactly what I experienced with her. So again, now, did I run in and, brag and tell her I'm purchasing a house? No, again, she was my friend. I wasn't hiding. I was meeting with a realtor. She knew what I was doing. The whole course, she knew exactly how I was trying to get that home. But I noticed that when I did finally purchase the home, she never said congratulations, never said a word. And again, the biggest hurdle or the biggest thing that I saw with her, she never stepped foot in my house to this day. So that just showed me and told me that I should have basically kept my purchase to myself. Now, I can't hide purchasing a home, but did I really need to make an announcement? No, I didn't need to, because obviously that person was not in my corner. All right. And the final purchase or the final item or things that you need to keep quiet when you're buying is when you buy anything to do with your self-care or your health. And let me explain what I mean. Now, everybody goes out there, everybody works hard. And after working hard, there are little things that we like to do to treat ourselves. Some of us like to get our hair done. Some of us like to get our nails done. Some of us even like to take ourselves out to eat, take our families out to eat. We like to take vacations. We like to travel. We like to get our feet done, whatever it is, any type of self-care. We even like to invest in items that we think are going to bring us wealth, such as courses and so forth. When you tell somebody who's not in your corner that you want to make that type of purchase, such as a self-care purchase, they're going to try to convince you. They're going to say no. They're going to say, you don't need to go out and eat. You could cook something at home, save your money. They're going to try to tell you, you don't need to take a course that's going to elevate you, where you can learn a trade or get some type of skill set. They're going to tell you that you don't need to do that. They're going to say that it's absolutely unnecessary. You don't need to explain that to anybody because you're not in your corner. Self-care is something that makes you feel good. And if when you have your self-care, they say when you look good, you feel good. So you don't need to explain that to anybody if you're trying to, grow and make yourself feel good about yourself. That builds your self-esteem. They're going to try to tell you that you don't need that. Those are just some of the items that you need to kind of keep to yourself when you're purchasing. If you need a car, you need a home, you want to invest in the stock market, you want to buy items or things that's going to make you money in the future, you want to do your self-care, you want to make yourself feel good, you want to take a relaxing vacation, you don't need somebody who's not in your corner, who's envious of you to tell you that you don't need those items. And they're only doing it because they feel that you're going to grow and you're going to go above them. So as I always say in my prior videos, move in silence. Make your purchases, but keep them to yourselves. Now, when you finally do purchase that car that you've been longing for, that you've been saving for, that you have made so much sacrifices to purchase, all that saving you've been doing, you go out, you buy your vehicle, you buy your car, and you just ride in style. You just ride off. You don't need to let anybody know that you're going to purchase. Trust me, they will see you drive by. When you finally get that home that you've been longing for, a piece of the dream, they say in America, when you get that American dream, you get a piece of the pie. You don't need to explain that to anybody. Again, they will eventually drive by your house. And who knows, maybe they will come into your house, being that they're not envious of you. Okay? They will come and look at the beautiful, successful achievement that you've made. but you just got to let it flow by itself. You don't have to explain that to anybody. When you finally decide to purchase those stocks, okay, you don't have to explain to anybody where you're getting your money from to buy your stocks. Buy what you want to buy. If that's in, your realm, buy what you want to buy, but keep it to yourself. And finally, we always continue taking care of ourselves. When we look good, we purchase things for our health, for our beauty, that makes us feel good. We don't have to explain that, justify that to anybody. You're as good as you feel. When you feel good, your health is good, everything else falls into place. Because remember, it's good to have money, but what's the sense of having money if you can't really enjoy your money because certain things are missing out of your life, right? You need to make sure that you're feeling good and you're feeling well about yourself. So again, those are just some of the things. If I'm buying it or I was buying it, I kind of keep it to myself, because you have to remember, when you achieve certain things and you buy certain things, which makes you feel and look better, or feel good and look good with yourself, people aren't happy for you. They're not happy. They're not in your corner. They resent you and they're envious. And you know what the sad thing about it is? They can have it too, but they chose not to have it, or they don't want to work for it. You've been working so hard to get what you want to get. You don't need anybody in your corner that's going to say to you, hey, listen, the things that you want to buy are unnecessary. It's not unnecessary. They're not unnecessary because you need them and you want them and you've worked hard for them. All right, beautiful people, that's it for today. Please comment, like, subscribe, and share if any of this message resonates with you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Liberty Mutual customized my car insurance, so I only pay for what I need. What a great day.
You're doing better than you actually think you are. In other words, you're actually richer than what you believe you have. All right, let's get into it. If this is the first time you're joining me, my name is Mel. This is Team You Finance, where we talk about leveling up, we talk about self-growth, and we also talk about how to preserve our wealth in the long run. Now, I'm going to discuss with you 6 ways that you're actually leveling up, but you don't realize that you're leveling up. So in other words, we're going to talk about patting ourselves on the back today. The first way that you're actually doing well is if you have a savings or you have some type of emergency fund that's put aside. Now, let me elaborate on that a little bit. I always talk about saving. I always talk about high yield savings accounts. I always talk about putting away money for a rainy day. But the question is, have we really been doing it, or how are you doing it? And if you're doing that and you're saving your money for a rainy day and you have at least a few months of living expenses put aside, should there be an emergency, you're actually doing well. So they recommend that the average person that has their job that is trying to save some money have at least 3 to 6 months of savings put aside should an emergency arise. Now I say if you have at least 3 months of living expenses put aside, then you're doing really well, because you're prepared should anything come up. Another way, or the second way that I think you're doing well and you're not really giving yourself credit for, is if you have some type of real estate investment. Now, let me elaborate on that. I always talk about owning a home, because when you own a home, not only you're building long-term wealth, you're also building equity over the span of about 30 years. The average mortgage is about 30 years. So just think about it. If you buy a house today and 30 years from now, you keep that home, you make your payments on time, etc., and it grows. The equity in that house would have grown so much, and the real estate, when it's appraised again, would be worth a lot more than what you bought it for. So you have some type of investment in that. Now, everyone doesn't have to be a homeowner to actually be doing well. It doesn't matter where you live. If you have some type of real estate, it could be just an investment property or some type of business that you own or anything like that, where equity is growing, where you're making money off of it, you're basically doing really well. Because again, you're learning and you're gaining long-term wealth at the same time. The third way that you can assess that you're actually doing well is if you have a small amount of debt. Now, I know, especially living in this country, the USA, everybody focuses on credit card debt, but it doesn't really matter where you live. Debt is debt. Whenever you owe somebody or you owe something or you have some type of commitment that you have to pay back, it could be a stressor. Any type of financial burden is bad. Any type of debt is bad. But if you look around and you see that your debt is smaller than what it was maybe a year ago or maybe even 6 months ago, you're doing really well. Now in the US, the average person has about $9,000 to $10,000 in credit card debt. That's the average person. Others might have less, others might have more. You might have a person have 20,000 in debt. Maybe somebody has 5,000 in debt. Maybe somebody has $100 in debt. I mean, I know 100 sounds like a really small number compared to some people, but debt is debt. Financial obligation is financial obligation. If you, whatever your numbers were, if you see that you're able to clear some of that up and you're able to pay some of it off, you're doing really, really well. Pat yourself on the back. The fourth way that I believe that we're doing well and we don't really recognize it is if you're investing in the stock market. Now let's talk about the stock market. Stock market is a great way for you to buy shares or to buy mutual funds. In other words, it's a great way for you to buy shares into a company. Okay, those things are, when those things are bought, they're basically getting return on your investment. You're gaining money, providing that those companies are doing well. Stock market is something where you put into it. It's not something that you live and think about all day, every day, but you know that in the end, should these stocks do well, then I'm able to make some money on it. So if you're able to buy stocks, or you have a few shares in the stock markets, or you have some mutual funds, you're doing really, really well. Another way that I believe that we're doing well, that we're not giving ourselves credit for, is when, number 5 is that we're not in competition with anybody. Now, that's actually a big one, believe it or not. In this day and age that we live in the social media age, we live in the social media generation. Everything is on IG, everything is on Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is that you follow. And everybody wants to show they're doing really well, they're growing, and sometimes that can make you feel a little bit small. But as long as mentally, you're not in competition with people for their money, you're not in competition with people for their job, their attire, whatever it is, you're not trying to follow anybody, you're actually doing pretty well. Because you don't need to compete with anybody except yourself if you decide to compete. Remember, you're your own self-growth. You're the one that's going to push yourself to do better in the long run. As I always say, and I always stress, you don't need anybody's validation, approval to show or to prove that you're doing well. So if you're not in competition with anybody and you're doing well, you're not trying to compete with the Joneses, as they always say, pat yourself on the back. And the final way that I believe that you're actually doing pretty well is if you have some type of money that you're saving towards retirement. Now, when I started with number 1, I talked about savings a lot. Retirement is, I'm not going to say it's a cliche subject, but it's a word that we hear about all the time. And a lot of us, we don't really jump on the bandwagon of retirement. A lot of people think they're going to be young forever. They think they're going to be at their jobs forever. I think the average person, providing you start working, at a young age when you're in your 20s, I think you have 40-something years to work. Yes, you have a long time to work, but we also have to remember that in the interim of that, things happen. Life happens. Okay, just a moment. If you haven't subscribed yet, or this is the first time you're joining me, again, my name is Mel. If this content resonates with you, please hit the like button, share this video, subscribe. Really appreciate your support in growing the channel. But what I was saying about retirement is that a lot of us tend to think that, we're going to stay young forever, we're going to be at a job forever. And sometimes we don't really put a lot of money into our retirement. That is something that we need to do. So if you, on your job, whether you're a business owner, you work for somebody, you're doing it privately, or you're saving for retirement, you're investing in a 401k, you're doing your company's pension, you open up something called a Roth IRA, whatever it is that you're doing to save for retirement or going towards retirement, you're actually doing pretty well. Now, I'm not saying that you have to necessarily have all 6 of these things that I mentioned to be doing well or pat yourself on the back. If you have at least 3, because I gave you 6 things, but I'm gonna stick in the middle, because sometimes, again, just like I just reiterated, emphasized, we're not in competition. Sometimes we tend to overdo it, trying to catch up with people. But if you have at least 3 of these things that you're doing rather well. Okay. For example, if you own a piece of real estate already, if you're investing in the stock market, or even if you're just saving some money, putting something down for a rainy day, you're doing well, because at the same time, you can basically count on yourself. You don't have to wait for anybody to do something for you should you run into a jam or a bind. That's really, really good. Now, I also wrote an ebook called 10 Steps to Leveling Up Your Money. If you get a chance, you could pick it up. Link is in the description. It just basically gives you some steps and some tips on accounts or moves that you can make in leveling up and growing your money and basically preparing. And in that ebook, I also talk about retirement. I talk about real estate. I talk about basic savings. I talk about all of those little things that we can do to grow and level up our wealth. Again, please subscribe, comment, like, and share if this content resonates with you. Now, I also want to have a conversation with you. In this video, in the comments, you can also put there what accounts or what type of savings you're doing, or what are some of the steps of the 6 steps that I gave you. What are some of the steps that you've taken to basically grow and to level up your wealth? As I said in the beginning of this video, you have to give yourself some credit. You have to pat yourself on the back and realize that you're doing well. Because self-growth starts with, self-motivation. If you're not feeling good about yourself, or you're waiting for people to tell you that you're doing well, it's going to be very hard for you to meet your goals or stand on those criteria or those objectives that you set to accomplish. So with that said, beautiful people, if you got this far in my message, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention. Again, level up, pat yourself on the back, and think about all the wonderful, wonderful accomplishments that you've made so far. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Hey, beautiful people. It's your girl Mel here from Team U Finance. And today I want to talk about 5 people that you need to immediately cut off or stay away from when you're trying to level up your money. All right, so let's get right into it. You know how I like to get into it. All right, the first person that I want to talk about is the user. You got to cut the user off. The user only calls you when they need some money immediately. They don't call you no other time. They don't text you. They don't check up on you. They don't come to your events. They don't spend any type of time with you. They don't help you plan nothing. They're just all about using you for what you have. You got to get rid of the user, because once you get rid of the user, once you cut them off, you'll be able to see a lot more things for yourself. And remember, the user is only out to get what they need, so they could use what they need from you. User doesn't care about you, so we got to get rid of the user. And let me tell you something what's really terrible about the user. Once the user gets what they want from you, they no longer have a need for you. Your friendship is disposable to the user. So when it gets to that level, the user does a few things. Either number one, they cut you off, or they could ignore you, or if they don't ignore you or cut you off, the user ghosts you. Completely ghosts, no call, no show, nothing. The user is completely out. So we want to stay away. We want to cut the users off. All right. Next person that we need to stay away from or cut off immediately is the blamer. Now, the blamer, it's everybody else's fault that they don't have anything. It's everybody else's fault that they can't keep a job. It's everybody else's fault that they squander their money. It's everybody else's fault that they didn't save. It's everybody else's fault that they make foolish, frivolous, ridiculous purchases. It's everybody else's fault. A person like that always blames everybody, never takes any type of accountability for their bad spending. You don't need to be around that person. Because number one, when you're trying to, save your money or level up your money, they're going to try to tell you that something's wrong. They're going to essentially start blaming you why they don't have any money. Even if you didn't know this person years ago when they started making their foolish purchases or their foolish investments, they're going to find a way to blame you, to say that, hey, it's your fault that they didn't get to where they need to get to in life. You want to stay away and cut those type of people off immediately. Again, people, if this message resonates or you like the content so far, please comment, like, subscribe, and I always ask, share the content. Thank you so much. All right. Next person that we want to stay away from is the complainer. They complain about everything. Although we're talking about money here, but the complainer kind of has a background. Because if they complain about money, then everything else is an issue and a bother in their life. They constantly complain about having no money. They complain about not having the job that they need. They complain about, other people being successful. They complain about their bills. Okay? They complain about their bad investments. They complain about you not doing what they're doing. They constantly complain. So a complainer, you need to just simply cut ties and move away from them. Another issue or another concern with a complainer is that whenever they come to you and out of the goodness of your heart, you try to make suggestions to them. They're like, what? Because remember, it's easier for them to complain rather than take a suggestion. Remember, your money is growing. You're doing well. You've taken advice. You start to seek out to people that can help you or to teach you how to level your money up. But the complainer does not want to hear that. They just want your money and they want you to listen. And let me tell you something else with a complainer. Many a times, because I've dealt with a few complainers in my life, in financial and other aspects of my life. The only thing the complainer does is they just keep talking over you. They just keep complaining and complaining and complaining over you. They don't want to hear nothing that you have to say other than, okay, this is my problem. Complainer is very selfish. It's all about the complainer, their wants and their needs. If you're dealing with a complainer and you're trying to level up your money, cut them off. You don't need to hear their money problems or any other issues that they have. Let it go. All right. The next one that I want to talk about is the abuser. This is the financial abuser. I know I mentioned 5, but I think that this is the worst one. And why I think it's the worst one is because the abuser, when they're doing it to you, you don't even know that you're being abused. And abuse goes in all different forms. But for the sake of this video, we're talking about financial abuse. You don't even know you're being used. You don't know you're being manipulated. You don't know you're being treated badly. You don't know people's basically, stealing your money from you. You don't even know that you're being treated badly on a financial aspect. Because the abuser, the way they come across to you, a lot of them, they come off very nice. They seem very sincere. Many times the abuser is not really, I don't want to say a stranger, but it's not really like a friend that we know outside. Sometimes the abuser can be a relative or even a family member. And those are the worst ones because they're close to your heart. They're close to you. So you tend to think like, you know what? Although you might have some type of inkling that you're being abused or you're being treated badly, you might say to yourself, nah, it must all be in my head. No, it's not in your head. The abuser takes your kindness for weakness. Okay? That's where that old adage comes. Don't take my kindness for weakness. They know that you're a good person. They know that you're a hard worker. They know that you're driven. You're very driven. You're driven emotionally. You're driven financially. Okay? You will work. You will save. You will do what you need to do. You'll take on a second job. You'll find other ways to make multiple streams of income. And so because they know what a good, dedicated person you are to building your wealth and financial stability, they take advantage of that. Sometimes they abuse you by telling you, oh, well, I never had this. I never had that. When you were small, when you were little, I used to do this for you. I used to do that for you, especially if it's a family member. In other words, they guilt you into feeling bad. You don't want to deal with somebody like that. Okay? You don't deal with an abuser or somebody who takes your kindness for weakness and tries to basically steal your money from you in the decoy way. You don't want to do that. So we need to really stay away from the abuser. We need to cut them off immediately. All right. The next person that I think we need to cut off and stay away from immediately is the competitor. So let me explain what I mean by the competitor. And before we get into it, I think competition is good. Don't get me wrong. Why do you think businesses thrive? Why do we think businesses make money? Because of competition. If a business is started and there's no competition, they don't have to do good. They don't have to level up. They don't have to try to make their product or their services good. But a competitor in the sense of finance, when it's somebody that you know and trust, that isn't a good competitor. Because a competitor would make you start to doubt yourself as to whether or not you're good enough. Okay? So let me further explain. The competitor wants you to do well. Only to a certain aspect, to a certain level. They want you to get better. They want you to make a little bit of money. But they only want you to make enough that they can benefit from. So let's say, for example, I'm just throwing some numbers out. Let's say you made $1,000. The competitor needs about 800 of that money because let me tell you, these people don't think twice. There's no holds bar with these people. There's no limits. They don't care. They need what they need and they're going to ask for what they need. Okay? That's what you're there for. Let's say you make $1,000. Competitor needs $800. Remember, you're only left with $200. The competitor doesn't care that you only have $200 because obviously $200 is not going to meet your needs. But you've already met their needs by giving them the $800. And that's how the competitor works. The competitor wants you to level up or grow enough to be able to give them. But they don't want for you to have more once they take away what it is that you have. They don't want you to grow. This is another dangerous type of person. If you're dealing with anybody that's like that, again, you need to cut off, you need to delete, you need to get rid of these type of people, okay? You need to just completely stay away from people like these. Cut them off immediately. You got to delete their numbers. You cannot keep those type of people's number in your phone. What does that mean? When they call you, ask you for money, you're going to tell them no. So again, people, those are just the 5 people that I mentioned that I believe that people should stay away from. We stay away from the user. We stay away from the blamer. We stay away from the complainer. We stay away from the horrible, horrible abuser, which I said was the worst one. And we stay away from the competitor. Once we start staying away from people like those or cutting ties with people like those, we're going to have more for ourselves to do the things that we want to do. Another thing that I want to add is that you have to understand when you're trying to grow your finances, your own personal finance, because remember, it's a personal thing, right? Your financial journey is personal. When you're trying to grow your money, you're trying to grow your wealth. These 5 people that I mentioned, they're not going to be happy for you. They're only happy enough or happy where you have something to give them or to offer them. The moment they can't use you anymore, you're the worst person in the world. Okay? This is where the whole cycle of blame starts. The whole cycle of blaming, oh, well, you know what? I did this for her. She ain't never do nothing for me. We got to stop dealing with people like those. We have to stop. We got to concentrate on making our own money. We have to educate ourselves about how money really works on a personal level, because again, this is your finances, right? This is how you feel. I'm gonna tell you something else. I don't care what anybody says. When your mind isn't right, and this is why I mentioned these 5 things about basically like cutting ties or getting rid of situations or people or environments that that don't add to your leveling up. They don't add to your mental state. They don't add to your mind. All they do is tear you down. They're negative. Nothing good comes out of their mouth. The only time they could have a good conversation with you is when they need to use you and they need to use your money. You just got to learn to say no. You got to cut them off immediately. Because by you keeping them with you, or you continue to have friendships or relationships with these type of people, it's like you're going backwards. You're never going to grow. You're never going to grow. So with that said, beautiful people, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Comment, like, subscribe, and share. If you've gotten this far in my message, maybe at the bottom you can comment money. Because again, we're talking about money, right? We're talking about how to level up and how to make our money grow without distractions and toxic people that's taking our money away from us. That's what we're trying to do. Again, comment, like, subscribe, and share. I hope everybody has a beautiful, beautiful day. Remember, you're as important as you feel. Put your money to work for you. Let it work for you. Don't let nobody trick you and guilt you into feeling bad about not having enough or not gaining enough. While you're on this journey to make your money, you have to get rid of all of the distractions and cut everyone off or everything off that makes it difficult for you to get to where you need to get to. Once you do that, I guarantee you're going to feel so much better. Some little things that used to bother you before, some things that you thought that you couldn't get, that you thought you couldn't buy. Because remember, why are some of the reasons why you couldn't buy the things that you wanted to buy? Because you're out giving your money to people. You're lending your money to people. You're letting people guilt you. You're letting people make you feel bad. You're letting people, again, make you feel bad for not having the things that they have. Why waste your time with people like those that are not on the same level as you financially? Clean up your financial life. Once you do all of those things, I guarantee you will start to see your money level up. All right, people, thank you so much. People often run into financial difficulties, and when they do, they come to you and they ask you for help. One of the difficulties that I want to address today is when somebody needs a loan ASAP. They needed a loan yesterday. They need to get something done. They need to buy a car. They need to, buy a home. They need to clear up some bills. Whatever the case may be, they need a loan. So we needing the loan. They came to you, and now they're asking you to co-sign. No, never. Never, ever, ever, ever. Please say no. That is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about 2 financial boundaries that everybody needs to set when it comes to their money. All right, the first one is obviously co-signing. Co-signing is when somebody comes to you and they need a loan and they say, hey, listen, because of my credit or because of my financial situation, maybe I don't have enough money and they're not qualifying me. I need to put you on the loan with me. I need your help. They ask you to be a co-signer because number 1, you have better credit, and number 2, you might have a little bit more money than them. And basically, you're like an assurance for the loan. You're a backup for the loan. But that's something that you don't want to do. Co-signing becomes a straining point when it comes to the friendship. Now, here's how it goes with co-signing. If you tell them yes and you end up doing the co-signing for them, it's going to be where you're now financially responsible for that loan, or, for making those payments. Let's say, you know the person for years, you trust them. It could even be a family member, a relative. It could even be your significant other, okay? They ask you to back them up by co-signing. Now you've co-signed and you've taken out this loan, this financial arrangement, this financial, burden now. And, let's say the person stops making the payments. Who do you think the creditor or that bank is going to come after? It's going to be you. First of all, they're going to write you. They're going to call you. They're going to ask you why the payments aren't being made. The banks is not going to care if you say, listen, I'm not the primary borrower. I'm only a co-borrower, co-signer. They're going to say, listen, you took out that loan. Your social security number was ran, and you're just as responsible for that loan. That is what you do when you become a co-signer on a loan. You're basically telling that creditor or the bank that you are just as much responsible for the loan. Even if the person defaults, you're still responsible for the loan. Now, in the long run, that could actually ruin your financial situation or your credit. Story time. I knew a lady a few years ago. We lived in the same building together. I mean, I had decent credit at the time. I guess she thought maybe I was doing super well. I don't know. But again, at the time, I'm just trying to manage my money. She would often come and talk to me and, vent and say, listen, we want to move out of here. My husband and I want to buy our first home. I'm like, great, wonderful. This is good. But she said, there's one problem. She says, we can't qualify for a mortgage. I said, well, why can't you? You got a job. He got a job. I assume your credit's decent if you're talking to a mortgage broker and a realtor. She said, yes, we can talk to the mortgage broker. We've spoken to the realtor. We even looked at several houses, but we can't qualify. We basically need a co-signer, another person to be on there, although my husband's name can go on the loan. So I had to ask, because, you don't brought your business to me and you want me to help you to get into your business. So I'm going to ask you why. She said the reason why she was looking for a co-signer is because a few years ago, her husband had co-signed for a family member on another house, and this before they met. She said as a result, that person that her husband co-signed for is now in foreclosure. She was even crying. She was like, this is horrible. She was like, it's a very close family member. My husband was only trying to help, but the person later defaulted. And she said they defaulted because they lost their job and the whole 9 yards. And again, in life, things happen. And this is the reason why, maybe we feel bad for people, but at the same time, we got to think about the long run and the big picture. Like, if I do this for you today, is it going to, be beneficial to me in the end, or is it going to ruin me in the end financially? So going back, she said, the husband helped somebody and they basically, because of their foreclosure, ruined her husband's credit. Now their debt is the husband's debt. So as a result, when the banks, try to qualify them, do the numbers, he already has that old debt on his credit. Make a long story short, the gentleman cannot at this point co-sign with his wife, which was, the friend that I knew. He could not co-sign with her, or he can't get on the loan with her because he already has that old debt that he's carrying from helping somebody to co-sign many, many years ago out of the goodness of his heart. And that brings me to my next point. Helping somebody, you're doing it because you're kind, because you're sweet, or because you're very caring. But at the end of the day, it comes back and it bites you in the butt. And that's what happened to that couple. Now, fast forward a little bit. She now wanted me at the time. And again, this is many years back. She wanted me to help her to co-sign, help both of them to co-sign. Well, at the time, I'm living in my building. At that time, I'm not thinking of buying a home. But, there's things that I still wanted to buy. The dream was, to get, a good car or whatever. And I knew that you had to have a decent credit score to qualify. And I thought about it and, I wanted to help her and I wanted to do it. After carefully thinking about it, I had to decline. So I said, I really want to help you, but I can't take the risk. And I even said to her, I said, well, look at it. I said, your husband did something so wonderful as helping, a relative of his to co-sign, and look how they defaulted. She says, oh, we're not going to default. I said, I don't believe that you would, because things happen. You willfully default, but I can't take a risk. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, whatever happened to that friendship? I'll tell you what happened to the friendship. And this is what always happens when you tell people no. especially when they want you to co-sign. She basically stopped talking to me. She stopped dealing with me. She still said hello. She'd occasionally call me. Texting wasn't big back in those days. So I mean, I can't say that she used to text me, but she kind of cut me off. She literally did. And when I say cut me off, it wasn't a fierce cut off. She would still speak to me every once in a while. If she's having a function, she'd invite me. But at this time, I knew that the friendship was already strained. And the only reason why the friendship was strained was because I did not co-sign for her. Okay? And at the end of the day, although I didn't co-sign for her, it kind of opened up a few things for me. I saw a few things. Honestly, she wasn't really a friend.